All right, welcome back to the Black Male Archives. I am your host, Rodney Freeman, and we have with us Michael Hubbard. Sir, how you doing today?
I'm great, Rodney. Great.
Also. So, we want to talk to you because you a jack of all trades, right? You're doing a lot of stuff. You have the publishing, you have photography. We got the chance to really connect when we were both working at Tennessee State. So,
Right.
kind of want the listeners to know who you are and your background. So, if you could tell the listeners where you from and your background.
I was born in an extremely small place called Halifax, Virginia. It's about 30 minutes from Danville, 45 minutes from Lynchburg, in the middle of nowhere. It's a farming community, and my dad was a farmer, sharecropper actually. And after his first crop, the year I was born, he paid all of his debts, his fees, his seed, and all of his fees, everything he had to pay. He had $25 left, so he got in a car with my uncle and went to Washington D.C. To get a job, a real job. So we lived in Washington D.C. for a few years, and then moved back to Virginia, and grew up there, and graduated from high school from Halifax, Virginia. Decided to go to Oakwood College. It was called college then, it's university now, and went to school there. Also went to Alabama A&M. I finished there with a bachelor's of general studies, electrical engineering, which I did over at Alabama A&M, art photography, and communication production.
I remember when we worked at Tennessee State, you told me that you worked at, what was it, Oakton, the
Oak
research.
Ridge Associated Universities, yeah, in Oak
Yeah,
Ridge, Tennessee.
yeah.
I was there
How
for
was
about
that?
15 years.
Okay, how was that? What was that like?
Well, it was great. How I got there is interesting. I was actually teaching at Oakwood. I had left Oakwood after graduation. I worked for Oakwood in public relations as a school's photographer and then assistant director of college relations. Then I went to grad school at the University of Wisconsin Stout. And as I was finishing there, I got an opportunity to come back and teach at my alma mater. So I went back to Oakwood and I taught for a few years. And then I received an opportunity to go to Oak Ridge Associated Universities. And I went there as a media technologist. From that, I ended up being a group manager before it was all over with in science education. And as a media technologist, one of my roles was to do environmental risk communication training. So we were training military, government officials on how to talk in front of the camera, in front of a microphone, after there was some type of environmental hazard, which was really interesting. I learned a lot doing that. I also worked with the National Library of Medicine database training, where we offered free training to educational institutions, poison control centers, the military again, on how to use the different databases that were part of the National Library of Medicine informational system.
Now that part I did not know. That database
The
training,
the
of
little
course,
library.
right. That's right up my alley with the libraries and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
talk to us about this passion that you have for photography, and like, how did
Oh,
you get
wow.
started with that? And yeah.
If there's one thing that has resounded throughout my whole life, it is photography. In the eighth grade, I joined a club, and we made oatmeal box cameras and developed the 8 by 10 sheet of paper. My homeroom teacher was the head of the club, and she was very engaging, and I was just taken by photography. And I decided I would learn everything I could learn about photography, and worked for the school newspaper, took pictures of everyone, bought one of those little kits, and developed my film in my grandmother's bathroom, uh, which created a mess, but she was happy to let me do it. And went to school and said, one day I'm going to be a photographer. So I went to Oakwood College as a theology major, and then I changed to religion, and then I changed it to religious communication. Then I went to engineering school. Then I came back to Oakwood and I graduated. During that whole time, um, Oakwood had acquired a photo degree. And so when I came back from Alabama A&M, I got into the photography degree and actually got a degree in photography from Oakwood also. And then at graduation, I was already doing some freelance work for the school. And I was asked if I would join as their full time photographer. So every night I was at home reading and learning and asking questions of other photographers, trying to make sure that I was the best photographer possible. During that period of time, they started the Oakwood magazine. So I was the first photographer and one of the writers for the first Oakwood magazine. I worked with Don Woods, who was my boss back then. He was the greatest guy. I learned a lot of design from him, him and Howard Bullard. Both of those are great designers. And I was just a young kid who was absorbing everything. And my dream came true. I got to be a professional photographer. So from that, I ended up getting a gig at the Huntsville Times for a summer. David Person, one of my roommates, was an editor there, and he got me a summer faculty internship, which was great. I took photographs all over Huntsville and for things all over the country. Had a great time, but decided that I wanted to do more than just photography. I wanted to do media. And so when the opportunity to go to Oral came about for media technology, I jumped at it because it was an opportunity for me to spread my wings.
Man, I bet you have some stories from the doing the photography on the national and local level. You probably got to see like a lot in and capture like a lot of like stories. Were there any stories or any news stories that stand out that that you remember that really was like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to tell my kids about this.
Well, there were a lot of people that I got to meet, but you have to realize I was in my 20s and I was just in the middle of life. I
Yeah.
was just having a ball. I was doing what I wanted to do, and I had good results. And so people were asking me to do more and more. I do have one story. It was a UNCF event in Huntsville, and Dr. J was the guest speaker.
Mm,
And he was also going to be the coach for the, let's call it the alumni basketball team, celebrity coach.
yeah.
And so I ended up hanging out with him the whole day, and the nicest guy in the world. I
Yeah.
mean, love Dr. J. He is just a good heart.
Yeah.
And didn't keep up with him. He gave me his information, didn't keep up with him, but I'll never forget, he was a celebrity, but he was so humble. He was
Yeah.
just a regular guy. And I said, this is good. Because I had met so many celebrities that were really snobby,
Yeah.
or didn't have time. They looked down at photographers as servants. Oh,
Yeah.
take my picture, make me look good, and I don't want to see you anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas he took an interest in me as a person. He asked me questions. He was interested in what was going on. He took time. He could
Yeah.
have been doing anything he wanted to do, and that made me really think. That's really a good guy. I want to be a good person like that. I want to treat everybody, with some kind of monicum of respect, because
Mhm.
that's how I want to be treated.
Right, right, right. And I have to ask this because I am assuming that you started photography before the digital camera age,
I did.
and so I kind of want to know: do you think things are different now with everybody having like a camera on their phone, or is it just still the same kind of concepts that from the I guess quote unquote the analog age with the cameras? Has something changed, or is it just the same principles as always, or what is it?
Well, since the beginning of photography, in its days of gelatin plates, and if you want to go all the way back to what is that, the camera obscura,
Right.
you can go back in history quite some way. It's actually exactly the same thing,
Mhm,
making memories.
mhm,
And
mhm,
when you look at photography, not from I'm going to make money from it, not from I'm trying to get the coolest picture ever, and you go like, photography is an extension of my inner self.
mhm,
And when people look at my images,
mhm,
they're seeing Michael Hubbard pour it out on a sheet of paper, taking a picture of someone else.
mhm.
So I try to do it. That's what's made it so enjoyable for me,
Yeah,
because no matter what image I take, I do my best
yeah.
because I'm invested in getting the best possible image in part of my craft.
Mhm,
I want to make sure that I give 100% every time. So when you look at photography that way, it's more than just taking a photograph, analog or digital.
Mhm.
It is the memory that you create. Kodak had it right, those memories, Kodak
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. But I did switch from analog to digital, and for me, it took a minute. And I I'm not a scientist, but I got deeply into all the pieces of photography in a degree and personally. And so it was very analytical for me to sit down and convert from analog to digital. It took me
Mhm.
about 6 months to a year.
Mhm.
And actually, I was at church and I offered to take photographs every week at church.
Mhm.
And what people didn't know is that I was actually teaching myself how to
Mm.
do digital. And
Yeah.
what I basically came up with, it's basically the same thing, different bells and whistles, different buttons, different things you can do, more control at your hands,
Mhm.
more opportunity to do better things. But the fundamental parts of photography never change. It's
Yeah.
light, it's exposure, it's time, it's photography, it's a memory.
Yeah.
My job as a photographer is to capture that memory so that when people look at it, they're actually hearing and seeing and feeling and visualizing what I saw.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, so I have to ask this. I know, everybody's talking about this currently in this new cycle about AI and how that is affecting photography, the AI art. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, okay. So I have to go back. In 1991, I went to a conference called the Philadelphia Conference, I think it was. It's a big photography event back in the day. I'm not even sure if it still exists, by the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Mm,
And the big conversation was a copy of the National Geographic where there was an elephant, a sunset, and a pyramid, and they had all been woven together.
mhm,
And people were just so upset. You had one camp saying, no, you should never touch. What you take a photograph, that's all you do. You take it, it's whatever you get. You can clean it up, but
mhm,
don't add anything in. There's another guy like, we headed in this direction. We're going to have to be able to merge images together. That fight has been going on forever.
mm,
So it's no different now that we have the ability not only to do the photos with artificial intelligence, but also being able to create things for NFTs. Same
mhm,
kind of conversation. I look at it this way, and I played with the image, Dahlia, I think is what it's called. I played with the artificial intelligence image maker, and you really have to be specific to get something worthwhile,
mhm,
but it is an extension of your creativity. If
mhm,
you're able to ask it the right questions, give it the right information, lead it the right way, you can get an image. Now, what I do believe is that you should disclose where you got your information from or how you
mhm,
created that image.
mhm.
But if you create something that's unique and it came out of your mind, out of your effort and your skill set, then actually creatively you have intellectual property on that.
Right, right, right.
Now,
Okay,
there are
that's
going to be people who are going to abuse it.
yeah,
That's going to happen no matter what you do.
yeah.
Well, you have to be credible.
Yeah, yeah. And you just brought up a good point too. How, as a photographer, how do you protect your intellectual property? Because I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing too, with people using images and people getting sued for, posting an image that they didn't own. How do you go about protecting your intellectual property?
Yeah, I see my work everywhere. And I came to a conclusion. If they paid me for that work,
Hmm.
then every time it's out in public, it's actually a reflection of me that I can use as my own branding. Now, people may not always see my name,
Hmm.
but I can tell my images. I shoot a unique way. And there's certain things that I do, and I can look at a photograph I took 20 years ago and I say, yeah, that's the same process formula that I use to create a portrait or create an image.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very difficult thing. I have a friend who published a photo, and then someone picked it up and it went national,
Mm,
and they got money for it and everything. And she actually sued them and got it removed. I don't know if she received any additional funds for it, but there are ways that you can protect your copyright. But the
yeah.
truth of the matter is that once again, going back to the creativeness of your brain in the world, from your brain to paper to digital image to, to recognition, that is an intellectual property in itself. Now, if you have an image that does go viral, then it's your responsibility to make sure that people know that it's yours and to get some legal assistance. On your own, you probably won't be able to do anything because some of these companies are so large. But in a court of law, if you can prove all of the elements of copyright,
Yeah.
all the elements of ownership, then you're fine. I haven't had a photograph that's gone viral per se. I mean, in a small way, but not in a large way.
Yeah.
So I've never had to deal with it that way. But if I were to have to deal with it, part of me would be honored that it made it on that platform. Then the other part would say, hey, yeah, I do need a little money for it, but I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
going back to, are you doing it because you want money, or are you doing it because it's part of your creative spirit?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I am going. I do want to ask too. Like, have as a photographer, um, do you think about your library and then your legacy as a photographer, or where you would like for that stuff to live, either online or in the archive, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I constantly think about it. I think we've had a couple of small
Hmm.
conversations.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those train of thoughts thing. I know I need to do it, um, and I need to talk to you like tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I need to do that. I have tried to archive everything that I have, that I could actually hold on to. I've
Yeah.
lost a lot of things for different reasons, different
Mhm.
times in my life where I wasn't paying attention to taking care of things, or I worked for different people and they have all of the, the negatives, or the digital images. I gave it to them.
Mhm.
And I just can't worry about that anymore.
Mhm.
But I do think about it constantly.
Yeah.
Will people know or realize the breadth, the breadth of images I have created over 40 plus years now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
would those images be of interest to someone else? And I've answered that question for myself over and over again. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
enjoyment I get out of my images, I've seen other people.
Yeah.
If you go to Facebook, I can't tell you how many people still have images that I took of them years
Mhm.
ago that are
Mhm.
on their timelines. I still see it in magazines and a few books. Occasionally something will pop up, and I go
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I remember that," but I don't have ownership of it anymore, or I let it go.
Yeah. 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 So what are you currently doing? What's the projects that you're working on right now?
Wow. Um, I'm always trying to keep my fingers wet in photography, so
Mhm.
we're doing stuff constantly, and that's why I got into the AI, just to kind of play around with it. I
Mhm.
gave my $15, I got my 100 and some credits. I think I've done 15. I haven't been happy yet, but it's a process. A couple years ago, I started a publishing business called Hubbard Publishing, Hubbard Media, and one of my students, Deontay Henderson, called me one day and he said, Mr. Hubbard, you really should pay attention to this. And I said, okay. And so he sent me a couple YouTube videos, and I said, yeah, I want to do this. I called him
Mhm.
back. He gave me a couple tutorials, and I got started in low content publishing. And low
Mhm.
content publishing is when the person who purchases your book or uses your book actually puts more content in it than you as a creator did. So journals, how-tos, things where you keep up with information like medical information, or your fishing log, or your gas log record. People have to use these things. And so I started asking people questions. I said, do you journal? They said, yeah, I journal. I said, well, what kind of journal book do you choose? Well, I look for something that I like,
Mhm.
and I get that. So I started doing the journals.
Mhm.
And then I branched out into doing a few coloring books,
Mhm.
just to do that more of an education, since I'm in education, do something a little more educational. And then I did one handwriting book. I've also done some events, turning those events into historical pictorials.
Yeah.
Well, this is new. I'm still kind of playing with it. I even considered doing a book on my own photographs. I said, well,
Yeah.
I'll make my own legacy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's been exciting and exhilarating, because to see your stuff published,
Yeah.
it gives you a sense of, yeah, what I'm doing is worthwhile. and
Yeah.
I'm using the Amazon platform Kindle KDP, and so I actually have what 18 author titles out there that have ISBN numbers. Some
Yeah.
people may argue, but I am an author. I have
Yeah.
published something, and I hope to take this and use it as a platform to do more. And
Yeah.
and from that, not only more for myself, but more to help other people because there are
Yeah.
so many people that have brilliant ideals, but they never put it into any kind of format. And
Right.
I'll never forget if we don't write, if we don't journal, if we don't capture our own history, it will be forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you are so right about that. I was writing something the other day, and I always go back to this that quote about the lion and the hunter, right? African proverb that until the lion learns how to write, all the stories are going to glorify the hunter. And I mean, we have to be able to write our own stories and,
Yeah.
like you said, capture them and preserve them. So, again, Mr. Herbert, well, before we get out of here, tell the people where they can follow you and check out your photographs too on social
Well, I'm
media.
on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm old, so I'm on Facebook.
Me too.
Um, and I have a simple website, but the best way to reach my stuff is through those two areas. Also, if you go to Amazon and you look up Hubbard Media and look up my name, then you'll get my author page and you'll see the images I have there, and some of my other contact information is available there. Um, those are the best ways to find information on me. Other than that, there's just stuff published, and occasionally you'll see my byline.
Yeah, sir, Mr. Hubbard. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Black Male Archives, where we capture, curate, and promote positive stories about Black men, which you are one of. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. I had fun.
Yeah, yeah, this is good. I'm finally glad. Everything goes full circle because you actually were like there when I was first getting this thing started, like
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
interviewing people.
yeah.
And I think we wanted to get a interview, but we never did. But now we finally got a chance to connect. So this is very timely. Thank you, sir, again for your
Oh,
time.
you're welcome. Thank you. It's
All
been
right.
great.